Johnson. How are you doing?
Yes, very good. Now
Okay, I
that
think
summer's here, we're
summer's
here.
here. Definitely summer's here. It's very hot at the moment. How is there with you?
It's good. It's good. We've had a few thunderstorms along the way, but it's getting better now.
That's excellent. So today we have another episode of the Resilience series, and I think we have two more to go. And then we will finish this series. But I'm so looking forward for the book and the playbook, and also for the other events that we're going to be developing within the Resilience series. And then we have more time perhaps to talk about towards the end. Also, exciting news about other people that are joining us, and there's so many new developments. It's very exciting. Today, we are going to cover probably one of your favorite topics, which is creativity, right?
Exactly.
Just before we ask any questions, have you done the time that we met and you were studying? Was it to do with creativity?
Yes, so the masters that I did a few years back was in creativity and innovation.
Mm.
So that piece to me is now so relevant in today's world.
Yeah, okay, that's excellent. Yes, I remember I was a tutor once also. We had a whole semester on creativity and innovation, which I was running with the lead of that subject. And it's a fascinating, interesting topic, and always get the students debating and talking a lot. And I wish our environment, our learning environment, would allow for more flexibility and different ways of putting things and fitting things together, so we would have more creativity and innovation out of the time together. Because for creativity, I guess you need to have more freedom in terms of expressing yourself and being together with others, correct?
Correct. So creativity, diversity, diversity of ideas is linked to diversity of people. So it's really fascinating to see how that works.
No,
It
nice.
drives a lot of change.
No, excellent. Right. So the fact that we are now talking about creativity and resilience, we are in probably trying to pull through and then make to the other side in the whole COVID pandemic, let's say, world that we're living today. Uh, it's easy to understand the need for resilience, but what is for me is how you fit them two together. So many would probably be asking asking like I'm asking now, what is the link between creativity and resilience? How do these two fit together?
Okay, so if we come back to definition first, because that's really important. So if you say, well, how do you define creativity? Well, one way of defining it is that it's something that is new, that is something that is valuable. So something new can be kind of intangible. It can be like you come up with a new idea, you come up with a new theory, you come up with a new piece of music or even a joke. So that's one thing. You can't see it, you can't touch it. The
Mm-hmm.
other is a new invention. It can be a new book, it could be a new painting. You know, it's recently when Richard Branson took off um, on Virgin Galactica. All of that combined, that creativity piece produced a new way of getting into space. So that's the first thing that you have to define what creativity is. Now, we've been talking about resilience for a while now, and resilience and creativity are like twins in one respect because they're feeding each off each other and they both involve a process. So the resilience process is that bounce back kind of thing where, you know, something happens to you, something that's not very nice, something like COVID, something like sickness, something like, somebody's lost a job, etc., and you need to be able to bounce back.
Mm.
So the two fit together like hand and glove, like twins, like say. The more creative you are, the more likely you are to come up with a new way of being. And so you're able to bounce back.
And
For
finding solutions to problems, correct?
exactly, yes, that's exactly right.
Being not being just conventional and just
Yeah,
fix in one direction, but looking at all directions and looking at every single possibilities, right? Correct?
exactly. So you know what it's like when you know last year we had the lockdown, etc., and you're stuck at home, and you might be at home. I'm not saying this about you and your partner, but you might have started off
Mm-hmm.
loving each other a bit more than you do at the moment.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But you have to kind of come up with creative ways
Of not
of.
killing each other, right?
Well, I was thinking more of
So what you,
share
that's what you imply.
co co-inhabiting and co-living and all this co-stuff that comes along.
Exactly, exactly,
You got to find a new way of doing it, and
exactly.
the more creative you are about it, the more resilient you will be.
Yes, and you said something about the essence of creativity is imagination. So the imagination side of creativity requires non-conformity and originality. I would like you to expand and explain more. What do you mean?
Okay, okay. So exactly that. The more creative you are, the more you can think up new ideas. So it's like, how do I imagine new futures? How do I imagine? Let's go back to living in the same flat, apartment, etc. So you need to work out, well, where do I put my desk? Where do you put your
Mm-hmm.
desk? How long are we going to work for? All of these sort of things. And if you have a fix, as we all would have, because it's like we're not used to something. And so it might be if you're grown up living in an apartment, you think, yeah, the 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 desk should always be on the left hand side. I think, hold on, no, no, no. You need to think maybe it should be on this side. Maybe it could be, partly on this side, and some of the time we move it around. And all these things take some imagination. So you
Mm-hmm.
might want to get a piece of paper and draw it. You might want to put some post-it notes on the wall, whatever it is.
Mm-hmm.
The more imagination you put into it.
I think something that helps also is, I mean, there is that phrase, what would Jesus do, for example? But I would
Yeah,
say, let's think about people in history and people that you might be you know, some connection with, like what Winston Churchill would do, or what would Richard Branson or Steve Jobs, or people who are creative, and we try to think as they would think in that situation and what they would do. It's a way of,
exactly.
for me, of expanding our minds to think outside ourselves for those powerful creative beings and people and all the enlightenment that they brought to the world. And what would they do in this situation? Would they
Exactly.
feel cornered? Would they feel afraid? And how can I learn from it? And how can I think like some of these guys in that particular circumstances that probably gonna help me to find a way out? And that's another way for me of creative thinking, or thinking creatively, when you try to think as somebody else that you admire would
Yep.
think in that situation.
Exactly. And you spot on there in the sense of if you think as yourself, I Andy think this way. Okay? That's fine. But when I Andy get tense, it kind of like you get very focused on what your pattern is. But if you, as I know, you read a lot, so you know about like say Churchill, or you research you of what Steve Jobs did in his world, etc. Then if you can put yourself in somebody else's shoes, you kind of quiet the emotional side, which is key to creativity. Because if you're all up there and everything's tense, you can't find new ideas. It'll just be too much noise.
Yeah.
So,
Absolutely.
so that
Um,
combination of knowledge that you have, and then applying it in a different way.
mm. Yeah, no, I agree with you. But can you then help us to see how do you practice that creativity in your day-to-day life? But can you give an example of yourself
Yeah.
and how one could practice that creativity?
Okay. So one of the things I believe that is like saying somebody says you can ask a question a different way. Do you have any hobbies?
Hmm.
And the key thing that people say, do you have any hobbies? They say, yeah. And whatever your hobby is, I guess for most of us, it would be outside of your normal work. So that's number one.
Hmm.
The second thing is it usually involves a bit of fun. There might be some work involved, but there's some fun attached to it. And so for me, I like taking pictures. I just go around, for a few years now. I've been taking pictures with a DSLR, and then it's got too heavy, and then now we've got the phones that can take pictures. And to me, photography is about seeing, not just looking.
Hmm.
So sometimes if I go for a walk with you and then you see me doing this, you see me doing this, you're thinking, what is wrong with this guy? Is that some people use a piece of card because it's about trying to see something different.
Hmm.
So I'll give you an example. When I went for a walk with a friend up the top of an ancient burial mound from the Stone Age or the Bronze Age. And there I dropped to the ground and I started looking at these trees and he thought, what's wrong with this guy? Because to me, it's like I want to lie at the ground and look up at these trees. And it gives you a different perspective.
Hmm.
And that's why it's like sometimes, I don't recommend people do this in big cities too often because you might get killed. Is you stand and you look up and you say, wow, I didn't realize those cranes look so beautiful, or the angle of the building, or
That's
whatever
right.
it is.
That's right.
It that sort of fun bit gives you a whole different perspective,
Hmm.
and it releases the tension. It drops your sympathetic. It increases your parasympathetic. It relaxes your mind.
But that is something that you do. I mean, I guess that is something you do consciously, correct? You go out, or is it's an unconscious sort of a action?
Well, well, I think like everything else that we can learn it.
Hmm.
So I I learn it in that I see other people doing it. So, I do like everybody else. I watch the YouTube videos and I see this guy doing this, and you do a little bit of study and you think, oh, yeah, so that's how they're doing it.
Hmm.
That's why they're doing it.
So
And
so if I
yeah,
understood correctly, you first of all you have to identify something that you want to be creative with, correct? An
something that you
activity,
enjoy.
something that you enjoy. So that is how you started.
Yeah, something that's fun.
Hmm.
It could be playing the piano. So a lot of people, play the piano, like say, is what is your hobby?
Hmm.
And if you can find and enjoy that, then
Hmm.
you can develop that.
And
So
of course within the constraints of law and all that type of thing, right? Because I'm creative in graffiti. Let me graffiti my whole street. So
but
there might be a space where you can do that, but you cannot do that all everywhere whenever you want to do, right?
oh
So
yeah,
there are some
yeah,
creativity that you need. I mean, you need to be bound by some sort of a, let's say, frame.
yes, you need boundaries because exactly, if you had little kids, you wouldn't want them being creative all over your walls with chalk and paint.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think two things for me about creativity, the two C's of creativity for me It's caffeine and creativity. Without
Caffeine.
caffeine,
Yeah.
my creativity every day starts with that.
Yes.
That's what sets me off for creativity every day.
Yeah. Yeah. I like it.
So yeah, but I guess we can all find things, writing or reading or playing or even talking to interesting people, and that
Yeah.
sometimes sparks imagination also. Then
Yeah.
walking into an art gallery
Yeah.
or walking through gardens or nature, whatever it is, can spark that creativity. But you need to be looking and keep looking. For me, another thing is keep looking, open your
Keep
eyes.
keep looking.
So that is another
Look
important thing.
look as a child, like you say, it
Absolutely,
might
look
doesn't
as a
have to be
child.
Steve Jobs. You can imagine yourself as the 5-year-old Andy. What did the 5-year-old Andy see?
Hmm.
Very, very different way of seeing that you are
Hmm.
now.
Hmm. Hmm. So how then does creativity relate to resilience? Let's bring back to resilience now. We need to fill that void, that gap between the two now with some information to our audience.
Okay, so the creative piece is the stretching out there. And you come up with all of these great ideas and solutions, etc. But what you're actually doing in the process is you're training your brain. You're training your brain and you're encouraging positive emotions.
Mm-hmm.
So there's loads of studies done on positive psychology where one set of neurologists found that when you're engaged in the creative or the pleasurable activities, your brain produces alpha waves, and that's the same kind of waves that you get with mindfulness, you get with relaxation, you get with meditation. And that's the link that is out there in terms of the science, that it enables you to broaden your thinking and to build new theories that you can test out. So that if your mind is positive and your emotions are positive, and you think, I found something, and then you keep building on that and you keep building on that, it's like the whole thing just broadens out.
Mm-hmm. Mm.
So that's the way, I think that you look at it, that there is play, but it changes your mindset. It
Mm-hmm.
gives you very, very different perspectives on
In that
things.
way, so I think we could connect creativity very close to meditation, to
Yep.
a time where you stop and you just allow that to take over you, and then your brain to wander,
Yes.
and the
Exactly.
breathing, all that aspect, right?
All of what we've discussed before previously about mind, body, and soul parts of us. The three parts start to gel together in a totally different way.
Mm-hmm.
But it is in that relaxed state that you're trying to get to.
Yeah, I wonder if there is like any connection between that and also with the aspect of fear and fear of moving out, because that creativity will point towards a direction. Then you have to overcome your own shortcomings, your own fears to move towards that space where the solution is to be found.
Yes. So that's why the other part of uh, creativity is sometimes it happens on your own, and sometimes it happens with other people.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're thinking, oh, I need to, let's say you're in your world, it's like thinking, I need to be able to reach more people to market a product,
Mm-hmm.
right? And but I've never done it this way before. So you might come up with some great ideas. It might be useful, it might not be. you've got yourself in a positive frame of mind, and then the other things start coming in, like, oh yeah, what about this, or what about the other.
Mm-hmm.
And when you start to, we talked about this before in terms of community, find a community of people who dream in the same way.
Mm-hmm.
It starts to deal with the fears. And like I say, fears are one thing, because we all have fears, but there's a difference between just running the same record through your mind, if anybody could remember what a record is,
Mm-hmm.
and instead of just keep going around a circle, but going around a spiral that goes up and expands and expands.
Mm-hmm. And at the end of the day, what's the worst that can happen, right? If you want to try something, just try it,
Yeah,
and don't let that hold you back, because you might be stuck in a position for a long time if you don't break out.
as long as you like you pointed out earlier, we don't end up in something that's illegal.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm talking about normal things. Well, having said that, I mean, for example, I've been looking in terms of psychedelics, and now it's growing a lot of the use of that, and even
Yes.
guided one. I don't particularly participate. I've never tried. I'm not planning to, but I've been researching and looking into. And I think Michael Pollan has an interesting book on it, and he was on Joe Rogan recently. And I'm just going through his audible on caffeine and all that. How all those, let's say, psychedelics, sort of. I don't like to call it drugs. I don't know if it's the right way of calling drugs, but it helps you somehow to connect. And the question is that with your inner being, or release yourself and being more creative and being bold, or stepping out, or finding the better you, whatever they define by this.
Yep.
And it's to
Yep.
do with creativity also, and releasing that creativity and looking creatively to your own story, and be able to now start writing a different one. I don't know, I can't attest to it,
Yep.
but that would be something that I'm saying is, there is a legality towards that, right? So that we need to
Yep.
draw lines of what we can do, what should be doing within the parameters of what is like medically approved and legal, and what you
Yep.
can do with your own body, and knowing exactly your limits, and your limits of your life and your family and your family members, without affecting you negatively, without affecting family members negatively, without being irresponsible. So I think that's probably what the boundaries that we are setting today about creativity, correct?
Yeah. So there's lots of boundaries. There are lots of people who push the boundaries. So
Mm-hmm.
in terms of chemicals, LSD back in the days of the hippies was a psychedelic at the time, and then it became more and more like, oh, we're never ever going to go there again. But some people do, and they're saying, okay, well, let's revisit it
Mm-hmm.
in a scientific way now, not just based on fear.
Mm-hmm.
We can say the same with yeah, cannabis or CBD oil or marijuana. That's now, those are huge topics in terms of what's legal.
The medicinal use of all of them, and how can help people to, even to bounce back, right?
Yep.
I think
Yep.
we're not preparing a psychedelics and resilience series, but that
No.
is a whole subject that I've been recently investigating that leads towards that. How the use of some of these substances can help you. I'm not planning to use, but I know I have friends that are planning to, and some people who know who have done it. Or how somehow help them to discover a new reality of life.
Exactly. So if we look at legalized marijuana, if the medical world is sort of like, we put this thing in a box and we've buried it in the ground for so long, and now what they realize is that, in people who have intractable pain, it, or intractable sick nausea and vomiting,
Mm-hmm.
there's a role to play. So sometimes the creativity piece is like, we have to be not afraid to revisit it again. And in so doing, you can possibly come up with new ideas, or new treatments.
Mhm.
So that might be a huge piece, but you can do this in your day-to-day life. It's the same principle.
Okay. How else can people find creativity or be more creative?
Well, it's a funny thing you say that. Well, the more you, it's one of these things. The more you chase it,
Mhm.
the less likely you are to find it.
Mhm.
And what I mean by that is that if I try and say, I'm going to sit here and write the 10 tips to to becoming more creative, and it may not work. It
Mhm.
might be the opposite. It might be say, well, just daydream a bit more.
Mhm.
Just allow yourself to just go, wow, that's interesting, and go in all sorts of different directions, so that as you start to daydream, you might, let's say, look and say, what I'll give you an example that's very, very common. What's the 10 uses you could find of bricks? You know, um, and somebody might make a list. Somebody say, well, okay, well, I don't know, but I'm going to sit here in a room and just look at this brick and just hmm, turn it round, turn it upside down, put my foot on it, whatever it is starting to begin to wonder about it. Um, and just start to ask yourself questions over this brick. What size could it be? What color does it have to be? All these sort of things help for us to just think more. So daydreaming is important.
Mhm. So that is how, and probably like reflecting and thinking back. And there
Yeah.
is a difference between when you ruminate and when you reflect. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
So I think there's a key difference. Ruminating to me is like you're going wrong in the same circle over and over again. It's like thinking, yeah, well, let's say something happened at work, and you managed to spill coffee over your, the coffee that you love, you spill it over your keyboard,
Mm.
and you just go around for hours at a time thinking, oh, I shouldn't have done that, or this happened or that happened, or somebody shouted at you and all the rest of it. Well, that actually leaves you nowhere. That's ruminating.
Mm.
If you start to reflect on it, then you start to ask questions of it, to say, well, how do I stop that happening again? Um, Maybe I should have a lid on the coffee. Maybe I should have the keyboard on a stand. And then you ask other people. So you get new input into it, new ideas, and that sort of stuff generates it. It becomes self-generating.
Mhm. So in that imagination and that, let's say, open imagination that we might have or might call daydream during
Yep.
the day
Yep.
might lead to discoveries and
Yes.
solutions,
Yes.
new realities and opportunities and possibilities, correct?
Wi- Without the psychedelics.
Exactly right. I mean, there is one psychedelic. Interesting you saying that, because there is one psychedelic. Because caffeine is a psychedelic. Caffeine, we don't say it, but it is.
Uh-huh.
If you know, caffeine is produced by plants to protect themselves, right?
Right.
It's a defensive mechanism they produce, and then I mean, it's fascinating listening to Michael Pollan saying that, and he can trace the Renaissance even within the Muslim world when they start drinking coffee before us, like 800s or something. One can even imagine the Renaissance and that growth in science and all the knowledge through they starting having coffee, and then later on in Europe, and you can then associate a coffee with the expansion of finance and banking and all the creativity,
Yeah.
and that is somehow coffee has, coffee caffeine has those properties. that really you can't imagine someone writing something without caffeine. I mean, we live off caffeine, most of us. And if you're not into coffee, you might be into uh, a tea, or
Yeah.
if you're not none of that, you might be into soft drinks or the sodas or the kind of caffeine inducement. But the reality is that society is like we are drawn in caffeine wherever we go,
Yeah.
and that is something that we don't talk about, but that
That
is like an open, let's say, hallucinogenics or something like that creates that reality, that wow, that kick, and then you start working and start having those
yeah.
let's say creative thoughts and thinkings.
I like
How do you
that. Yeah.
suggest one daydream practically? let's
Well,
let's let's go
that,
through stages of daydreaming or imagining or finding a time in the day and practice that.
yep. All of
Let's
those.
daydream for resilience now. So how can we have how to build creativity into your resilience, into your life, in order to build resilience by releasing that in doses throughout the day.
Okay. So to me, it's like, if somebody said to you, well, you need to take this tablet 3 times a day, breakfast, lunch, and dinner. So that's a routine. So one routine I know that a lot of people use is that in the morning before you start to get to work, you know, instead of sort of stretching your arms, stretching your legs, etc., stretch your daydreaming
Mm-hmm.
before you get down to what you think is a serious work. Have a routine of daydreaming. Have a daydreaming corner if you want, where somewhere is physical. So John Maxwell, one of the great leadership gurus, says he has a thinking corner. He has a space in which he allows his mind to walk. He doesn't go
Mm-hmm.
dog walking. He hasn't got a dog. So he get into his favorite chair in his favorite corner. He would sit down and let his brain go wherever it wants
Mm-hmm.
to.
Well,
Things
me
might
and,
come up.
me and John C. Maxwell have something in common, because I do have a thinking chair. I have a chair where I think that's one of the first things I do every day is just
Wow.
sit there and think.
What does your chair look like?
It's a yellow chair.
Yeah.
It's a beautiful yellow chair, and it's in one corner of the house where I can see the mountains and can see also outside the balcony, and I have the leaning tree. And I sometimes I sit outside, but I like my chair mostly this yellow chair, and that's what I do every single day.
Wow. So that's exactly it. You have your own space, and it encompasses a lot of the other stuff like we've talked about before in previous episodes.
Mm-hmm.
It's about nature. It's about sitting out there and going, wow, oh yes. And whatever it is, your mind is relaxed in that corner. That physical space is where you know your mind just switches straight into it
Mm-hmm.
because that's where you sit to do it and it's a routine.
Mm-hmm.
So it's the same like, you say, well, if you get stuck in a rut about something at work or you get really stressed, you can't just keep hitting your head on the wall over and over again. Sometimes you just need to back away and allow yourself to dream.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And then there is something also to do with thinking about things that are not necessarily productive. Can you explain a little bit more about that?
Yeah. So because most of the time whereas people are goal orientated or task orientated and thinking, I have to be working towards X. So let's say you run into that problem again. You have to raise, £1 million or £20,000 or whatever it is in a fixed time period. And it's like I've racked my brains, I've done this, I've done that, I've done the other, and nothing's happening. So instead of going sitting in your corner and daydreaming, a lot of us might go into a corner, pull out the laptop, um, surf the internet, check out the social media, or even research. And I'm not saying research is not important, but there is a place for it. But daydreaming is something very, very different because you are again, it comes back to relaxing your mind, relaxing your body, relaxing your
And
spirit.
sometimes just go for a quick walk around the block, isn't it?
Exactly. Yeah. Or some one other way to do it is read um, 100 lines in a novel
Mm-hmm.
or a poem. And I know you like poetry. So, for example, if you start to read poetry, other parts of your brain start to get active and the other side relaxes.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. No, absolutely. What does it mean, clean your desk with awareness? I
So,
understand what clean your desk means because that's what I keep hearing. But what does it mean, clean your desk with awareness?
so this is another sort of like a little practice that writers and creative people tend to do if they've got stuck in something. So rather than if you can't get to your corner, if you're at work, for instance, you might go into the common space, the common room, and they might line up all their books in alphabetical order, or they might go in the kitchen and they say, right, well, I'm just going to clean the countertop.
Mm-hmm.
All of this is not related to work, but it's activity. So this is another way of exercising a different part of your brain.
Mm-hmm.
And you find that after a while, as you exercise one part, like say, you rest the other side. Because to me, the one definition of resilience is stress and rest. So if you imagine a seesaw and it's moving up and down, if you stress one side, you rest the other side. So if I rest one, it's like, okay, I'm stressing my cleaning,
Mm-hmm.
or I'm putting these books in alphabetical order, or I'm looking for dust in the corner, or whatever it is. It sounds really silly, and it is because it is silly in that it allows you to rest the other bits that you've been working hard at all the time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, that's very interesting. And more and more companies, organizations are coming to the coming to to the conclusion that if they give some time off to employees and staff, they are also more productive,
Correct.
or reducing the working journey, or during the week. I mean, working the four days a week and give one day out or something else for work in the community or something more creative. But you believe that a half a day off, for example, also supports that, right? Even a half a day can also support you moving outside of your daily routine just to release that.
Yep. Yes. So I mean, it was years ago that Google was famous for their 20% off time in a week.
Mm-hmm.
So they were actually systemizing um, the I the creativity piece. So you say, right, well, instead of working on the next iteration of Gmail, just go take half a day off, sit down there, talk with whoever is else is in that same space, see what you come up with.
No, excellent, fantastic, Johnson. Creativity and resilience. You have convinced me. There is a link
Okay,
between the two, and I will definitely carry on drinking my coffee.
definitely.
No, I have reduced it. I used to have like 1 liter in the morning. and I have reduced to half a liter now, and I water down a little bit. But there is something else that we're looking at now, and we might be that is something for our near future. We're looking into a new product that we're going to bring. We replace that, but as a surprise for our listeners and for our community. And I'm looking to, always test myself first before I actually put out there. But definitely, I don't think I could survive much without it. And I think definitely we could even have like a resilience and coffee, because it definitely helped me to bounce back. But you know me well, Johnson. You know that I cannot go without coffee, certainly throughout my day. But fantastic. I'm looking forward to the other episodes. And also, we are putting together a day or a weekend soon, right? And we're going to
Yep.
announce that, correct?
Yep. We are putting together our first physical resilience weekend.
Excellent, excellent. Looking forward to it. So if you haven't subscribed to the channel, guys, subscribe it now and send to your friends or your family, and keep supporting us. And we're great to have you here. Great to have you with us in different channels that we can meet us on a website or across the social media. Okay, thank you very much, Johnson. Until next episode.
Great.